it really took me down. Yep, I made you leave, and that's the thing I'm afraid of, but I also was spending so much time trying to make happen in that sick way.
How do you feel about yourself now?
You're going to get me to cry on screen.
Welcome to The Couple Cure. Here's Jay and Lori Pyatt.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of The Couple Cure.
Today is kind of a special day for us. It is the first recording we're doing after 4th of July, and you want to tell them why the 4th of July is important to us?
Yeah, so in 2010, our D-Day happened before the 4th of July, but on the 4th of July, Lori and I had a pretty bad fight that morning. And at that point, I said that porn's no longer going to be the conversation of my life. And that is the day that I chose as my recovery date. So this year was 15 years clean and sober on the 4th of July.
And in a minute, we'll get into what happened that was new that day. That I don't know if that made the change. In fact, I'll ask you about that. But for me, this one is really important because we had 15 years of trying to get sober, white-knuckling, fighting about this, and then that happened 15 years ago. So we now have more time in healing, more time reconnecting than we did in that broken down state. So this one is a really important one for me, more so than past ones, because it feels like we're now out living the problem.
Right.
So before we get into the questions, kind of the background into what I did differently was July 4th, 2010 was the day Jay came out with some new information, whereas, the month before that, he had been saying, no, I'm telling you everything. And so when this new information came out, I think it actually was a few days before July 4th, I was like, we've been planning a trip for Independence Day, and I want my own freedom. So I went on the vacation myself. Mm-hmm. And so my question for you, and I've got several questions, but in fact, before we get to that, what was your darkest moment in that weekend?
Oh. Well, like you said, you left. And I think the darkest moment was thinking this might be it, that we finally crossed a line that we would no longer be together. So for me, that was the dark moment. That was the moment of realizing that you could leave and you had left. And, this belief that everybody leaves and all those kind of things, it really took me down in recognizing, yep, I made you leave, and that's the thing that I'm afraid of, but I also was spending so much time trying to make happen in that kind of sick, unconscious, unaware way.
That leads to something else, but before I get to that, had I ever left like that before?
No, you hadn't. And that was new.
That's really frustrating to me because, and I can feel some kind of tears coming up right now, but it's really frustrating because when it came out in 1998, so good 12 years before that, I had wanted to go back. We had moved up here north, and I'd wanted to go back home south to my family. And our pastor at the time said, well, you can do that, but it might interject factors that you can't control or that you can't predict, I think is how he said it. And that just struck fear into me. And I was just like, if this is coming from a pastor, maybe he knows something I don't. So I stayed. So for you to say me finally leaving made you get and take this porn addiction recovery seriously, that kind of upsets me, because it's like I could have had 12 more years
Right.
and only 3 years of breakdown between us. So
Right. Yeah.
a little frustrating. What did you tell yourself when you hit rock bottom?
That uh, that day was the thought that I was done having porn being a conversation in my life. That I was done for it controlling our conversations, for controlling me, for, just always being this looming issue that I was just done. I so wanted to be done with it.
So how is that different? Because you used to tell yourself, I know I'm a pawn of the enemy and your sins will find you out. Like I had heard that early in our recovery or in our marriage. So how is that different?
I think most of us as addicts have a few moments where the pain hits a 10, where the pain is enough that we really want to change. And again, the frustrating to you, frustrating to me, part of this is that, prior to July of 2010, every time it got kind of painful, I ran away. I shut it down. I did something to keep the pain from getting worse. That's part of my history as well, of like not being able to endure pain. But I think that day, that process took my pain level up, especially with you leaving, even though it's a trigger, even though it's, a number of things, the pain of you leaving brought it all to a 10.
Okay, so I want to get into your different thinking modes, but so you're saying that what I did to change things was leave.
Yes.
And I know that a lot of people here can't leave. There's this thing called like stepping back in your heart, divorcing him in your heart, like working toward that. That can make it easier to physically leave. But I know even just separating, even for a weekend, isn't possible. Try to find space in your house. Try to go to a friend's, leave him with the kids, and, do something. Just get space. If he will respect it, then claim an area of your house just for you, if you have that. Maybe it's the back porch. Maybe it's your bedroom. Try to have a place to withdraw, and then don't give in. Because that weekend, I don't think we even talked at all.
No, we didn't.
And I have to say, like what I remember from that weekend was, we had planned on going to a county fair. And so, we needed a hotel room and that sort of thing. I can't, it wasn't the first time we were separate overnight, because he had business trips, but I can't remember if, yeah, I had taken a trip before that. That was the
Yeah.
last time you used.
Right.
Was,
You'd gone to see a friend.
yeah, graduate from college, and that was the last time you said you would use. So I was used to
Right.
being alone, but this one was different. It felt heavier. It was lonelier, yet I was also more resolved. The prior one, just a couple months prior, that trip felt like a girls' weekend, because I was going to see my friend.
Right.
This one, it was graver. And even when I was walking through the different areas that we would normally go through, it felt like, oh, this is what we would normally share here. This is what we would normally do together. And I had to not give in to that kind of, I call it the oxytocin bonds. I had to snip those oxytocin bonds and just go, no, like this is for him to lie while telling me the truth. That was too far.
Yeah.
Like he went too far there, and something mattered more to me than spending time with him or sharing this experience with him. So that was a big difference for me.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would say this is one of those things that we try to focus on, which is the person, the healing of the person takes priority, because when we are still in close proximity, it's easy to get distracted. It's easy to romanticize, which I think is some of what was going on for you that weekend, was kind of the romantic, like, oh, this would have been, a fun thing to share.
For me, it was more memories. It was it was a loss. I was grieving a loss. It wasn't
Okay.
like, I don't know. It was like, oh, we should be doing this beautiful thing. It was like, I missed you.
Right.
But I guess what I missed was the lying you.
Right. Yeah.
The next thing I want to talk about is addictive thinking versus sober thinking.
Right.
How did your thinking change after that? And maybe go into more of the specifics, because I'm assuming things changed over time. But what did you stop camping on? What did you start shutting down after that weekend?
I think one of the things that I really started to shut down was the idea that pornography was taking care of me. I mean, you had gone on that trip, and from that trip until that weekend was, I don't know, a couple of weeks, maybe a month.
It was, almost a month, I think.
Yeah, so I had already kind of lost that desire for it, but this really kind of set it in stone that it was not doing anything positive for me.
And that at that point, you had edged for a couple years, and then you would actually follow
Relapsed.
through.
Yeah. I mean, it happened sometime in 2006, and while in the details, I wasn't masturbating, but I was still looking at porn, and I was still, so sometime in 2006 to June-ish of 2010.
Okay. And I know that I had, and this is a topic for another time, but I know that I had changed things from about February of that time to about, well, probably until D-Day. I had changed things with you. And I always wondered if that played into your weakened desire for...
Oh, yeah, possibly. I mean, I think that was one of the things that really started changing quickly, though, was the, just that realization that porn wasn't giving me anything positive.
Okay. How do you stay sober 15 years later?
So, I've established a bunch of daily, weekly, regular disciplines that keep me grounded, keep me in reality. It also helps that I have you, also kind of checking in and paying attention to me every once in a while. But I was telling Lori, right now I'm going to a meeting about every other day. Not all of them are recovery.
Yeah.
But I'm interacting with other men. I'm having healthy connections with other men where we can be vulnerable and get things out in the open. That's one important piece, is that healthy connections with people. Another one is a very healthy connection with God, my higher power, however you want to look at that, the spiritual peace. That is intentional and daily. And then I'm doing some form of journaling at least once a week, but it's more every other day, that I'm writing some thoughts down. I'm actively saying what I'm grateful for, because from an addict's thinking, we're entitled. We're not grateful for anything. It's all owed to us. Where when I'm being intentional about what I'm grateful for, even simple things, that helps me stay more grounded. So, and then there's things like keeping calm and some of those other techniques that we use. Anyway, that's it.
On that, those have made all the difference in our ability to get through conversations.
Yes.
We've had they weren't bad conversations, but
they used to be.
Yeah,
I mean,
they were
they were topics that they used to like blow the doors off, and we'd be in terrible breakdown afterward.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was about to say. They weren't like, I wasn't even coming in like angry or upset or in an emotional upheaval or anything. But those are topics that he probably would have spiraled out of control for. So I think that helps you stay sober.
Yeah.
And I think definitely the relationship with God does as well. We have some techniques that can really make that a very real, very daily thing.
I will just real quickly say one big thing, and this in many ways has made a lot of differences, is dealing with my expectations. It's one thing to have an expectation that I say to you, like, hey, I have this expectation, we're going to do my birthday a certain way or whatever. But it's all of the expectations that I have that are unspoken, that have been just in my subconscious most of my life, that why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing that? It's like, because she doesn't know.
Yeah.
But in my head, it's like, these are clear, understood expectations, and they're not.
Yeah.
And so letting go of those expectations or talking about those expectations have been a big change too.
Right. Okay. What does freedom actually feel like now?
Well, freedom feels like, I mean, I don't know what prison is like. I mean, a little bit, because I went through Army survival school, but that was not that bad. But that kind of feeling of daily being kind of trapped and just having this thing thrown at me all day long that beat me down in so many ways, and kept me very stuck. Yes, there was pleasure involved, and I did a video about how Gollum, the character from Lord of the Rings, felt stuck in his obsession, and I don't feel that anymore. I have peace, which is so different, that in my mind, I'm not in this constant running conversation about, how terrible I am or how obsessed I am or any of those things. I'm at peace, which is so different.
Yeah. How do you feel about yourself now?
You're going to get me to cry on screen. I think most of all, it's not really how I feel about myself. I accept myself, which is different. But I'm grateful to be here. I'm grateful that that's not, I talk about porn all the time, but it's not the conversation of my life. It's not the thing that's always hanging over my head. And, you know, that acceptance, we've had this conversation so many times. What if it's true? What if that word you hate is true?
About you.
About me. Whether it's abuser or addict or liar. And I can own the truth of them and not feel afraid, not feel shame, not feel like limited by those words. So.
Okay. I'm glad you feel that way. I can tell, like, before he couldn't sit still, he couldn't get quiet. There is a level of peace about him now that's so refreshing. He doesn't always have to be in front of a screen now. He can connect now. He can sit in his mistakes. He can own his, past behavior. In fact, he did it yesterday. I was like, Jay, look, it wasn't, not this huge issue that we're talking about, but there was something he did that I felt a little abandoned, and I was just like, I just felt a little abandoned. Anyway, I had to go like, Jay, it wasn't that bad. But he really tried to own it all day and apologize for it. So that's all, has been new. I can't say it started exactly 15 years ago, but it phased into our interactions. It phased into him somewhere along the way. And I'm glad to now have more days in a good spot with you, being able to get through bad conversations, being able to talk about the past without it leading to, a vacation separate from him.
Right.
So with all that, I think we'll wrap this up here. I need to get to a call in 2 minutes, so I wish we could talk more about this.
Please be sure to like and subscribe. That's a good way to support us. That's free. Thank you so much for being with us today, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Bye, guys.
Bye.